time for another round of brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
This is going to be a little bit of an interesting episode, I think, because the subject came about, Reilly, you were recently, last week, out in Orlando, Florida, at a conference, and we're speaking, and you had a certain question posed to you and kind of started us thinking about this. So why don't you kick that off and kind of relate that story?
So the talk was to PR and communications professionals, and it was really about kind of proper rebranding and that being based on strategy, yada yada yada. I talked for
yada yada.
I talked for a good hour.
We're not talking about that yada yada.
No, not that. And we talked for a good hour, and then had a little Q&A session afterwards. And this young woman asked a question. She's new to marketing, and she brought up this whole kind of trend and my thoughts on this trend on TikTok and whatnot, where you have employees. Let's say it's a marketing employee, and they're showing how, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just figuring out this marketing thing. Yet they are doing this for a large corporation or something like L'Oreal or something like that, where you have someone who's kind of doing this innocence play of trying to be, authentic and real, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And then that playing into the brand's kind of position of, maybe this marketing isn't actually it's not trying to make money off me. It's actually very authentic. Look at, she's just a young girl, in this marketing department for a small or large business, and she doesn't know what she's doing, which you and I both know that's not true about marketing, is that marketing is trying to get you to buy something. Like, that's the whole point of it.
The whole point of it, yeah.
So so ultimately I was kind of like, it comes down to, I was like, you do have these flashes in the pan where you do have these trends, you have these viral moments where maybe something like this does go viral, but it comes back to the principles within marketing and why are you doing these tactics, which this would be like employee generated content where you have this kind of cheap supplemental way of showing authenticity or getting trust of the audience. But going back to the principle of it, going, okay, well, why are we doing this? Or even why do we feel the need to do this type of, quote,
it's just
marketing?
I think it lends itself to all of, it's just that when small businesses find something, whatever is, trending, whatever's going viral right now, and kind of mimicking that just to gain the views, gain the clicks, gain the likes, all those other things. And it brought up even the term of flash in the pan, right? Uh-huh. And just by definition, pulled it up in Google, and Merriam-Webster defines the term flash in the pan as a sudden spasmodic effort that accomplishes nothing. One that appears promising but turns out to be disappointing or worthless. Oxford, the actual Oxford Dictionary defines it as a thing or person whose sudden but brief success is not repeated or repeatable, which I love. And it's just one of those things that the term actually originated from the late 17th century when flintstock muskets were used in an attempt to fire a musket that resulted in just the gunpowder flaring up, but no actual ball projectile firing out was said to be a flash in the pan. It just reminds me of all the the Instagram stories and TikTok reels and all this stuff that I see so many brands flooding in my media feed.
Yeah. It almost feels like that. Like, these companies can't stop. They're stuck on this treadmill, and they're playing the game where you pay for the ads, you pay for the suggested posts, or whatever it is, or even just the influencers, and your brand's out there, and you're just pushing, and they ultimately have to keep paying and paying and paying.
If the mindset is that you are going to grow the brand's audience through social media, that to me is a false conception to have, because to me social media should be a way that a brand continues to engage with their audience, but the audience needs to be authentic, it needs to be real, it needs to be having engaged with the brand outside of social media.
Yeah, and this kind of does go in contradiction to pretty much everything we talk about, because it's like going back to that quote or that definition about flash in the pan, it almost is exactly opposite what Aristotle would say about excellence. Is that Aristotle would say, we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. And again, when we've talked about Disney, we've talked about Steve Jobs, we talked about all these great founders and these great companies where they've accomplished something because they are so darn persistent and so darn exact in what they do, repeatedly, is that then they build these empires. They build these brands that actually do make a difference and make an impact. So a flash in the pan or any of these tactics like, employee generated content and stuff, they aren't repeatable. Your post going viral, although it may be the hopes of your social media team or that young person you hired for not a lot of money, they are trying to, get this crown of going viral, of getting so many views or whatever. But if it's not repeatable, it's not excellent. So the only way for your brand to become excellent is to be something that you can repeat, that you can keep it going and keep that momentum, kind of like a train going where you're just building up that momentum. And we wrote about that in Brandy as well, where about the train and momentum and whatnot. But and again, I think it comes down to being able to identify what those things are that make you special. And again, social media isn't evil by nature, right. But I think a good example to look at is how luxury brands go about their social media accounts, where it's like, I follow Aston Martin, and Aston Martin has a ton of followers, but not all those people they're not going to buy an Aston Martin. It's like, but they gather around and they get the people who are obsessed with how great their product design, the automobiles, how great they are and how luxurious and amazing they present their brand and the lifestyle of it. But that's not Aston Martin. It's not like Aston Martin's thinking, oh, we're going to get customers from
you just
from
said
social
you like
media.
them, and I know you. You don't own an Aston Martin.
Not yet.
But you follow them. But the point is like, so why? And like, is it just because of that brand for you, right? So let's just flip it around to the people that do engage with brands that they've never actually experienced the brand, but they're fans of the brand.
Yeah, you can almost appreciate something about it. And that's a very high end example.
But that also to me, I guess part of that answer was jaded, was that that's the power of brand. Is right. That if brand is about relating, brand is about being vague enough that but you magnetizing effect on an audience because of what the brand represents, what the perception of the brand, what it communicates, what it signals. Mm-hmm. So for someone like you who I know has fine taste and enjoys fine things, liking, even though you don't, own one now, you're a fan of that because it aligns with your other beliefs and positioning and everything and how you see yourself. And so brands that become an embodiment for you.
Right. And I think it's also, especially on the luxury side, you do have it where they are signaling devices, these high-end brands. So even them having presence among us peasants who don't have an Aston Martin, it actually helps bolster their audience, because the people who actually do have one and they drive it and they have the newest model or whatever, they feel part of that group. So then the social media is being used as a social signaling device, and it reinforces that overall, that power of that signal. But again, going, how does this apply to a small business where, okay, I'm wanting these quick wins. I want to get 1,000 followers, or I want 10,000 followers, and they start looking at these metrics. And that's the problem from my point of view, is that it's similar to like SEO or these brands that focus too much on these very numeric metrics, where you're just getting so focused on the effort of moving that number up that then you lose focus on the actual relationship with the audience. You just look at it going, how do we get more followers? How do I get more likes? How do I get more views on our videos? We need to do things that are more trendy, that are more viral, that are more on, what people are doing right now. And that almost is the opposite of what you want to be doing, because it's like, that is, for something to be viral, for something to be trendy, it's therefore the average. It's therefore, like, by definition, it has to be, it's a meme.
Well, and it makes you look silly, frantic, and desperate.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the issue here, is that although these things glitter, what was the saying? All that glitters isn't gold.
Yeah.
It's fool's gold. This is the fool's gold of marketing, is looking at going, wow, that thing's shining in the water. Actually, I panned for fool's gold in the river up north, and I got a lot of it. I didn't get any real gold. But it's funny, because the way you tell fool's gold from real gold is that fool's gold doesn't have weight. It doesn't sink. It moves with the water. And
it has a little more shine too, doesn't it?
I think so.
I always
think
remember
it's
it being easier to see in the riverbed when you're, looking, digging your hands, you're saying, "Whoa, is that gold?" Now it's just
no. And then anyone with a brain would realize, wow, gold's just not going to be floating down the river. Like it's not. That's not how life works.
The top of
real
the
gold. Yeah, it's like, and so it's, to me, it's like it's very, very similar. Where it's like, okay, just because you can see these things go viral, you see all the views, you see all the whatever it could be, and it's a trick. It's going to hurt your brand in the long run, and it's going to dilute what you're actually trying to accomplish, and even that positioning you have with the people who are actually already buying from you and who are actually already in love with your brand or what the value that you are providing. So I think social media, unfortunately, is an engineered low-hanging fruit that makes you feel really good about what you post because it is addictive. It's engineered that way. And even on your personal account, it's like that. But even for your business, it's trying to make you feel a certain way or spend money on ads and keep that going because it's by nature. And so if you are having the mindset of these quick wins, these short-term mindset, it's almost the vice that will get a chokehold on you.
You brought up a good point when we're talking about, just the like the younger generation. A lot of this, the employee content that are particularly susceptible to falling these pitfalls. I think a lot of it is because it's a generation that is striving to be transparent, be authentic, but at the same time, that's what's important to them is being used against them in social media. Where now these trends of basically falsely being authentic, which is counter to what the core of that generation's belief is, right?
Yep.
It's why we talk about like the Generation Z stare. Like if you're in sales and marketing, you get it. The young employees, they're checked out on their phone. It's like if a transaction happening, great, but they're not going to be overly warm and genuine to the customer walking the store and all that stuff. We mentioned this on one of our previous episodes. And a lot of it boils down to what's important to this generation is being real and authentic. Why would I greet you when you walk in? Why would you, oh yeah, and put on a big fake smile when I don't know you and you could be a total jerk? And that's the approach and that's the attitude and that's the mindset of a lot of this generation, which is two of my boys are in that generation, so I'm not knocking that generation. But that is, I think, now when those people, the ones that are being hired on board, companies that are either an employee and also doing their social media account or running it as part of a social media marketing campaign, and hopefully with some intentionality, though, the premise is weird because now they're faking authenticity.
Yeah, and I feel like that the fake faux authenticity that is being displayed is it's counter signaling. So counter signaling in luxury and with celebrities is what you see when Brad Pitt wears like, sweats or something. Oh, he's not wearing fashion labels, although he definitely could, right? He could wear fashion labels, but he's just wearing sweats when he gets his whatever $50 smoothie from someplace, and then he gets in his Range Rover and drives off or his G-Wagon. But that's counter signaling. So the same thing happens here, where with social media you had, back in the day when Instagram first started, you had this very authentic people posting. The filters were awful. It was just like this very organic growth. And then it became overly polished, where you had this huge rise of influencers, moms posting, where then it's like these filtered lives and you're doing all these things and you had a bunch of blogs and yada, yada, yada. And then the pendulum has to swing the other way because that went way too far, where things were way too polished, way too influencer focused. And now you have this counter, signaling happening, where that's why when people post now, they post not these polished shots, but now it's like almost looks like accidental photography. It looks like something that now all the photos are all grouped together and they do like these, photo dumps where they're trying to show, oh, I don't really care, I'm just posting photos, right? So it's like this opposite effort. And that goes into the workplace as well, where you can't show you have too much effort, because that's opposite. You can't show that you care that much, because that's not authentic. So it's like this counter signaling, and then that goes into the social media where they are trying to counter, present themselves where they don't really care. Although they do care, because their whole lives are based off these metrics. They do care what goes viral. That's why you look at what the younger generation, what they want to become. So they want to be like YouTube streamers. They want to be famous. They want those things. However, they can't show that. So it's like, and in my like millennials, we were overly like, thanks to Apple and Steve Jobs and like capitalistic energy, we became the over like effort. Like we were all hungry, go to college, do all these things, and it just became this whole machine of trying to strive for things because we were part of the entrepreneurial swing that went up, and now it's the opposite side of the pendulum. So I guess with all that being said, it's like the pendulum swings, and you do have this obsession with the metrics, with the obsession with these, how you're portraying yourself and how you're doing this. So it's like, it's different, but still the same in a lot of ways.
You know, just circling back around, as we're closing this episode up, we just want to again underline the fact that social media in itself is not bad. If you're using it for your small business, to grow your brand, that's great. It's just be mindful of what you're doing. Be mindful of these pitfalls, and be mindful of leaning too hard on the data and the likes and all other stuff, because in the end, it isn't going to give you the longevity of connecting with your audience that other aspects of expressing your brand will.
Yeah, don't be the flash in the pan. Focus on the principles of marketing. And that's what I told this girl, is that it's like you are always going to have these trends in marketing. You're going to have, especially with, you know, social media and internet being prevalent on all aspects of a business now, it's like it moves so fast. So the best thing to do is to look at those cornerstones of marketing and brand, like we talk about here and we read about in our book, Brandy. It's like these are the foundations that you build your company and your brand off of. You don't rely on these little tactics and trends and flash in the pan. But until next time, cheers.
Cheers.